Hello everyone, Mark here, and today we're going to be talking about masks because I've been receiving a steady flow of comments in the various videos and shorts that I've been publishing about the event that was held at the Nippon Budokan on February 6th of this year. There were numerous demonstrations of Koryu, or classical Japanese martial arts. I get a steady flow of comments about basically the fact that we were demonstrating while wearing masks. Most of those comments are basically just kind of laughing the whole thing, perhaps hinting that masks are not effective or they're useless. Other people seem to think that it is painful to wear during training or demonstration in this case. So today I want to maybe take a moment, not so much to convince people that mask wearing is good, because you have your opinion on this and I'm probably not going to be the person to change it, but to discuss the subject from a cultural perspective standpoint. You have to understand that this event was held in Tokyo, Japan. Japan has a long history with masks. As a matter of fact, it is thought that the first masks to be in use in Japan date back as far as 1879. But in terms of mass adoption and having bigger crowds basically start to use masks, that's probably something that started more in the 1920s. And at the time there were numerous posters and advertising that were promoting the wearing of masks. Now during the 20s also, it's important to actually mention that in 1923 actually there was the Great Kanto earthquake, and people from Tokyo were greatly affected by that. There were a lot of damage, a lot of fires were running because a lot of the buildings and structures were made of wood, those kind of occurrences. But basically just to kind of help to protect from the smoke and the debris and so on, people will actually start to wear a mask also for that. Fast forwarding to today, it's important to understand that the coronavirus is not the first of that category of virus to actually come either to Japan or dangerously close to Japan. There were SARS and MERS as well in recent years, and that basically is also one of the reasons for concern, especially given the fact that many public space in Japan gets very crowded. Case in point, if we're talking about train stations, for instance, out of the 51 busiest train stations in the world, I think there's only 5 or 6 that are not in Japan. As a matter of fact, the top 3 is all in Tokyo, namely Shinjuku, Shibuya, and Ikebukuro in order. And we're talking about massive amount of transit, right? And we're talking about billions of transits per year or so. So basically Shinjuku is going to be about 1.2 billion transits a year, a little under 1.1 million transits a year for Shibuya Station, and a little under 1 billion transits a year for Ikebukuro Station. That's not a phenomenon that's unique to Tokyo. If you go to Osaka, which is basically where in the number 4 station, busiest station in the world, is there, and it's accumulating at 820 millions transits per year. Now, I'll put a link to a study in the description below. But one other thing that's also important to keep in mind is that trains often go to overcapacity, and we're talking about not being able to sit down or hold onto a rail or strap that would be over 100% capacity. Now, trains frequently hit the 250% capacity, especially in the Tokyo area and especially at certain time of the day. At that point, basically, you are not holding to anything, and people are squeezing on you so hard that essentially, when the train starts to tilt left and right, you're basically just, bobbing like this due to pressure. It can even become hard to breathe at some point. Now, with that level of proximity, you're talking about maybe 30-40 centimeter proximity from one head to another. Wearing a mask is just sometimes kind of a practical thing, so that, people with bad breath and so on in surrounding areas, or people that just came out of drinking and so on, just kind of smell. Wearing a mask can help a little bit with that as well, right? This is kind of also a segue to making the point that masks have also been used quite frequently for purposes other than health risk mitigation. One of the reasons would be, well, semi-related, but basically fighting allergies. When there's a lot of pollen in the air, wearing a mask has helped a lot of people go through the season where there's a lot of allergies in Japan. It's also considered that a mask would help a lot in the event of a volcanic eruption. So it's very easy to forget, but Mount Fuji is a volcano. The chances that it erupts are relatively low at this point, but they have been increasing over the years. And if you go back to the last eruption, basically there was so much dust that it came all the way to Tokyo. So there's, if you look at a map, you're going to see there's huge distance between Mount Fuji and Tokyo. But a good part of the city was basically covered in black. It's said that basically you need to use candles to, as lights basically even during the day because it was so dark. It's also important to keep in mind that volcano dust is not like normal dust. The chemical composition is poisonous, but also the actual crystallization, the way it crystallizes, creates a very strong irritant to the throat and the lungs. And if you already have a pulmonary condition, asthma or whatnot, that becomes extremely problematic. So wearing masks actually is also something that is thought it would help in those cases, and it's probably also one reason why the masks are so readily available in Japan in general. It's not just because of trying to keep people healthy in terms of avoiding infection, but it's also because of other health-related elements, or at least trying to protect oneself from non-bacterial or non-viral agents as well. This is why these are some of the reasons why culturally in Japan people just wear masks. And they wear masks because they don't want to get sick, because they don't want to get other people sick. You're going to see sometimes people are going to be wearing masks because they have a really busy week at work coming up and they want to make sure that they're going to stay healthy. Sometimes you're going to be wearing a mask just because you're starting to feel a little bit under the weather and you want to make sure that not to spread whatever it is that you might have. These habits basically precedes the coronavirus by a long time. It's also not infrequent to see people actually show up at training wearing a mask. Generally because people are feeling under the weather than anything. Sometimes it's going to be a head instructor or whatnot that couldn't find somebody to replace them, so they're going to be wearing a mask. They're going to keep a little bit their distance. That's been true for a long time. I mean, many of my senpai would show up at training wearing masks because they wanted to make sure to not spread whatever it is that they had, but they actually had to take care of people. Some people also are going to show up because they just need to keep up with the training regimen for whatever reason, right? Maybe there's some testing coming up, and so obviously it's a little bit more painful, but people got used to it, and I don't think that's really that problematic. As a matter of fact, wearing masks during training is ubiquitous enough of a habit that you have basically dogi maker, so training gear maker, that have been making masks for years. You're gonna see, there's some masks that go under your kendo men, for instance, the helmet that you wear during kendo. You also have like full face masks. Some of them are gonna be dyed using Japan blue, so basically aizome, just to make it look like a kendogi. It's really ubiquitous. So when you're leaving a comment about mask yada 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 yada, you have to understand that maybe that's not part of the culture in your country, and maybe it is very new, and maybe you have a number of people in your country that have a certain set of opinions about mask wearing. But in Japan, it's been the de facto standard. As a matter of fact, once the pandemic hit, you could hardly find anyone outside of the house that's not wearing a mask. People basically really believe in the benefits that masks can bring in terms of avoiding the propagation of sickness, of viral propagation in this particular case, but just even if you have a cold and whatnot, there's a good reason for them to believe that. If you believe differently, that's your thing. I really don't care, but do keep in mind that there's a cultural element to that, and maybe think twice next time that you're thinking about leaving a comment regarding masks. That's it for today. If you have any questions, comments, please feel free to put them down in the comments below. Thank you for your time, and until next time.